Welcome to the day two of e-workshop series second on COVID-19 for healthcare professionals by Public Health Foundation of India. If you have any questions related to the session, you can put it up in the Q&A section. There will be a Q&A round after the session. And if you have any issues regarding the audio and video of the webinar, you can put it up in the chat box, the normal chat box. Our IT support is there to help you with that. Now over to Dr. Sandeep. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to all the colleagues who have joined from the different parts of our globe today. It's really a great opportunity that PHFI got in collaboration with the Global Development Center and Research Information System, that we were able to continue our second e-workshop series on COVID-19. On behalf of PHFI, I'm really thankful to our eminent faculties also. And today we have none other than but the main person who is helping us all the time from the back for getting all of you at one platform. It's none other than Dr. Sanjay Kalra. Dr. Sanjay Kalra is DM Endocrinology from All India Institute of Medical Sciences. He's a consultant at Bharti Hospital, Karnal. He's the president of Endocrine Society of India. He is also the vice president of South Asian Federation of Endocrine Societies, education editor of International Society of Endocrinology, and section editor for Endocrinology API Textbook of Medicine. Before I would hand it over to Dr. Kalra, sir, I would like to give you the update upon the statistics of COVID-19 globally as well as in Indian perspective also. If you see the global figures, the WHO is saying that we have already crossed more than 2 lakhs mortality all across the globe. It has started impacting now in the African countries also since last few days. The African countries that are saying we have already touched around 18,000 cases in the Africa. More than 2.8 million cases have already happened all across the globe. And if you see in our Indian perspective, we have already touched more than 26,000 cases in India, and 8,824 mortalities have happened so far. Since we have the second series of e-workshop, we were also very skeptical in selection of the various topics. We have kept the topics in such a way that would cover all your different other aspects of COVID-19, which are not in a position to cover up in the previous series. The purpose was that in the session of 4 series, we were not in a position to cover all the things. So today we are going to have a second session on management of COVID-19 cases. The title is Resource Husbandry in Resource Challenge Times, a Diabetes Perspective. For this, I'm handing over to Dr. Sanjay Kalra, sir, to take it over now. Over to Dr. Sanjay Kalra, sir. Over to you, sir.
Good day, friends from all across the world. Bonjour, mon ami, from Francophone Africa. And bon dia to all my friends and colleagues, especially those from Mozambique. These are troubled times, you all know. We are limited not only in resources, but also in times and in how we can contact our patients. But what has happened is that COVID has become a great leveler across the globe. In usual times, the rest of the world usually says to Africa and to Asia that you are resource limited. And they criticize healthcare systems in our countries for not being capable of handling basic issues. But now what we see is that across the globe, whether it is America, whether it is Europe or China, COVID has leveled all healthcare systems. Even the best of healthcare countries do not have essential medication. They do not have PPE, and no one is prepared to handle this pandemic. What happens in such cases? In desperate times, we need desperate measures. And those of us in our countries, and today we have people, warm welcome to people from Francophone West Africa, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Benin Republic. My very good friend, my younger brother, Cedric Ahumagnon, is here with us. We also have people from Eastern and Southern Africa. And we have people, our brothers and sisters from South Asian countries and from Myanmar. Warm greetings to all of you. This is what Shakespeare said around 500 years ago. Many of us do not know that Shakespeare himself recovered with great difficulty from the Black Plague. And in fact, he lost his son. He lost his 11-year-old boy to plague. What he said was that desperate times breed desperate measures. In modern days, we now know this as when the going becomes tough, the tough get going. Even 500 years ago, there was a Black Plague. At that time also there were doctors. Doctors did not have much medication to help their patients with, but they still went out to work. And this is the picture of a plague doctor. This is how doctors used to go to handle patients with plague. You can see that this doctor from Europe has worn a full-length suit. It looks like an abaya. He has covered his head. He is wearing gloves, and he has also worn a face mask, which is quite similar to what we are doing today. So if 500 years ago, this predecessor of ours, this colleague, this doctor, could manage plague, then why can we not manage today? When we talk of desperate measures and desperate times, we see that in our countries, like in Mozambique, for example, or in Myanmar, and from Mozambique also, my younger brother is here. His name is Dr. Hidayat. Thank you, Dr. Hidayat, for joining us. Hidayat is teaching me Portuguese, and Cedric from Benin Republic is teaching me French. And they're trying hard, I can tell you. Both of them are trying very, very hard. Now I can understand greeting and thank you and goodbye in both the languages. So these challenges that we face in all our countries, in India, in South Asia and Africa, how can we classify them? The importance of classification in general in life is that if we can classify or structure a particular challenge, then it becomes easy to classify and structure the solution to these challenges. So we classify our current challenges as being biomedical and psychosocial. The biomedical challenges are those related to the healthcare system. The psychosocial ones are those related to utilization of the healthcare system. Let's look at biomedical challenges first. These are defined as the 3 A's. In many of our countries, because of resource challenges, we find that there is lack of availability of healthcare facilities. There is lack of affordability, and there is lack of accessibility. In French, disponibility, accessibility, affordability. These are the challenges that we all face. But from Nigeria, we get this wise saying, the same sun that melts wax is also capable of hardening the clay pot. So when you see this challenge in front of you, the heat that COVID is giving us, it will also help us become stronger. The same sun that causes challenges also gives us the strength to fight those challenges. One of the challenges that we face in my country is lack of drugs. We are under lockdown now for 5 weeks, and we find that in many remote places, we are not able to get all the OADs, oral glucose lowering drugs, and insulin and other drugs. How do we handle? If a particular brand name is not available, change the brand name. Keep the molecule the same. Suppose we have prescribed a fixed dose combination, but that fixed dose combination is not available in the market. Ask the patient to procure loose combination. Tell him the scientific names. Suppose even that is not available, then you keep the same drug, but you can change the drug formulation. For example, glyclazide modified release can be changed to glyclazide normal release. The milligrams will change. If even a different drug formulation is not available, let us change within the same class of drugs. So I will change, for example, glyclazide to clemipiride. I will remain within the sulfonylurea class. If even that is not available, suppose I have not been able to get metformin let us say for example, and now I cannot change within the same class of drugs, there is no other option available, then I will change to a different class. Maybe I might have to change metformin to DPP-4 inhibitor. But if I do this, I have to be very, very careful. I have to intensify the frequency of glucose monitoring. So if we are changing a drug, especially if we are changing the class of drug, we have to intensify glucose monitoring so that we avoid hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia. This is easier said than done, and we will discuss how to do this later on today. But even though we are struggling with non-availability, remember that there are many resources. So reach out to the government, reach out to social organizations, to non-governmental organizations. It is possible that the religious leaders may be willing to donate. And in this month, our Muslim brothers and sisters are observing the holy fast of Ramadan. You never know which church, which temple, or which mosque will be willing to reach out and help your patients in remote areas. Changing oral drugs is difficult, but changing insulin is even more difficult. If your particular insulin is not available, change the brand name. Try to give biosimilars if the particular name is not available. But even when you are changing insulin, remember to keep the same regimen. What does regimen mean? For those of us who practice diabetes, we know that we can classify regimens into basal, premixed, basal plus, and basal bolus. So if your patient is on basal bolus regimen, try to keep the same regimen, basal bolus, but you may want to change the insulin formulation. So in general, in diabetes, first you decide the regimen, then we decide the preparation. For example, do we want to give human insulin or analog insulin? Then you decide the trade name and then the delivery device. So try to avoid changing the regimen. In case a particular formulation is not available, maybe Humalog 2575, then we can change to closely matching one. For example, Novomix 3070. If Rhizodeg is not available, and this is not available in many of our countries, then we change to another analog insulin. And again, try to reach out to the government and to non-governmental organizations. And you will be surprised as to how many people actually come out to help. I would like to extend warm greetings to our colleagues from Rwanda. We today have 50 people who have joined the webinar from Rwanda. Along with that, our biggest contingents are Myanmar, 177 participants, and Nigeria, 120. A question to everybody from Nigeria and the neighboring countries also, Ghana and Togo and Benin Republic. What does my name mean? You can see my name written in front below me, Sanjay Ayodele Kalra. What does Ayodele mean? Let's see if the Nigerians can help us out. And we also have strong contingents from Kenya, Jammu, Kenya, and Bhutan. We have 30 people from Bhutan and 10 from Nepal. These are our neighboring brotherly and sisterly countries next to India. And we also have people gathered from all over the world actually. Mozambique, I already mentioned. We have people from Sri Lanka, from Uganda, and we have people from very far off, USA and Mexico, Saudi Arabia and Netherlands. To those in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere, Ramadan Kareem. And we have somebody from Somalia as well. Warm greetings to our brother from there. And we have people from other parts of Europe, United Kingdom, Spain, from East Africa, that is East Asia, that is Taiwan and Malaysia. So warm greetings. And of course, South Africa and Bangladesh, again, sisterly countries. So we were talking about insulins, and in some places, insulins are not available. And why I shifted to Rwanda was because Rwanda is the home of a computer system known as Ubuntu. So to those of us from Kenya, South Africa, and Rwanda, what does Ubuntu mean? And how can Ubuntu help us overcome non-availability of drugs? Now, supposing supplies are limited, and I want to give 10 units twice a day to my patient for insulin, but there's no insulin available. So I'll tell my patient to reduce the dose and maybe take 6 or 8 units. But then how do I ensure good glucose control? Number one, ask the patient to intensify non-pharmacological therapy, increase physical activity, ensure a balanced and limited diet in moderation, and also improve stress management. Number two, this is empirical suggestion, increase the gap between the prandial dose of insulin and food intake. So suppose your patient is taking rapid acting insulin 5 minutes before a meal or premixed insulin 5 minutes before a meal, ask the patient to make the gap 15 minutes. This will increase the efficacy of the insulin. Of course, there is a risk of hypoglycemia later on after 3 or 4 hours, but in general, the lesser number of units will act more. So you can reduce the dose of insulin by increasing the time gap between prandial dose and food intake. And if you are doing a good job, then guidance from Myanmar, which is known for its wise sayings, for its proverbs, and for following the teachings of Lord Buddha. The proverb from Myanmar, we get this wise saying, a genuine ruby won't sink and disappear in mud. So if your insulin is genuine, if the way in which you are treating your patient, your love for your patient is genuine, then even with lesser drugs, you will be able to manage good glucose control. If you despair, just for a minute, think of the doctors who were there 500 years before us, 50 years before us. They did not have any medications. They hardly had any drugs, yet they were able to treat their patients. I wonder sometimes what our predecessors used to do. They did not have antibiotics, they did not have insulin, they did not have so many things that we take for granted. Yet they used to keep their patients and their community happy. In fact, all across the world, we find that patients were happier with their doctors up till few decades ago as compared to now. What is the trick for this? The trick is called therapy by the ear. And can we have translations, please? In Myanmar language, in Nepalese, in Sinhala, in French, in Portuguese, in Spanish also. We have people from Mexico today. Can we have translations for this word? Therapy by the ear, by the ear. What does therapy by the ear mean? Number one, your ear listens. So listen to your patient the same way you would want to be listened to. Listen with both ears open. Your ears will do a better job than the stethoscope. As it is now in COVID times, in coronavirus times, using the stethoscope is dangerous. Using your ears is not dangerous. Number two, speak to your patient such that you want to be spoken to yourself. Speak the way Lord Buddha teaches us to speak. Softly, with calmness, with compassion. If we speak properly to our patients, that also acts as a therapy. And this is called therapeutic patient education. Patient education or patient counseling itself has a therapeutic weightage. Now, so we have discussed two parts of therapy by the ear. We are waiting for translations from everybody. The third part is filtering. Now, what does filter mean? Your patient's ears and your community's ears are exposed to a lot of outside noise. This noise is not welcome. This noise says that if you drink bleaching powder, then you will defeat corona. If you drink 100% alcohol or you drink methanol, then corona will run away. So what happens? People end up drinking bleaching powder, they end up drinking alcohol, and somebody in America, people drank sulfuric acid also. And I don't know whether the corona died or not, but they themselves died. This is called, this is the third part of therapy by the ear. As a good doctor, as good physicians, we should filter our patients' ears from unwanted outside noise.
So can you move the slides, sir? Somebody is pointing that slides are not moving.
No, we are still on the same slide.
Okay, so somebody has pointed.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, sir.
We are still on the same slide. So what happens is that if you practice diabetes therapy by the ear, listen properly, speak properly, help your patient understand correct from wrong, this will give us better outcomes. But sometimes therapy by the ear alone is not enough, and you need therapy with injections. So let me spend a few minutes on this. And I know from discussion with many of you personally in Myanmar, in Mozambique, and West Africa, that we know that intravenous insulin is required in the ICU, but it is very difficult to give IV insulin. Sometimes we do not have the insulin pump. Sometimes we do not have trained nurses. And especially now, because the load upon the healthcare system is so much, it becomes difficult to manage all this. So the next few minutes, let's talk about intramuscular insulin. Please remember that IM insulin is not a routine therapy. It is not a substitute for subcutaneous therapy. It is, however, a substitute for intravenous insulin, which will be indicated in people with severe hyperglycemia and with ketosis, or perhaps with mild or moderate ketoacidosis. So see the difference. One is hyperglycemia without ketones. Second is hyperglycemia with ketones, but they are not in clinical acidosis. And the third is patients have become so sick that they are now in ketoacidosis. In the first two classes, types of patients, we can start intramuscular regular insulin. The maximum dose we would want to begin with would be 0.5 units per kg body weight. And the dose can be repeated at 4-hourly intervals. To make sure that the insulin goes into the intramuscular space and not the subcutaneous space, we need to use a long needle and inject it 90% at 90-degree angle. How do we titrate? Usually what we do in practice, we check the glucose before the injection and then 3 hours after the injection. And then we look at the difference, and then that helps us decide how much insulin to give for the next time. At the same time, if the patient is able to accept food orally, we encourage fluid intake and also oral intake. Intramuscular insulin is important even if you are not working in the ICU, even if you are not working in diabetes care, because then you can share this information with your colleagues, and it will help. It will actually help people in time of need. Where I work in northern India, the first 1 to 2 weeks, our lockdown was very, very firm. And I got 2 patients. One was a 6-year-old girl, newly diagnosed type 1 diabetes. The other one was a 12-year-old boy. Both came in ketoacidosis. There was no place to refer them to. I did not have any nurses with me because nobody was coming to work. The lockdown was so severe, so strict. So we gave intramuscular insulin, and both the children recovered. And I can still see the smile on that little girl's face. The smile that she had when she went back home in the evening, that was worth $1 million, worth $1 million, or 1 million naira, or million francs. We have other drugs also, and there are drugs like dulaglutide and zoledronic acid, which we use in endocrine practice. These are drugs that are given at weekly or yearly intervals. If you have a drug like this which you are using, whether in oncology or in endocrinology or rheumatology, what you do is you just increase the duration, the duration between 2 doses. A week can be extended to 10 days, and an annual treatment can always be extended to 13 or 14 months. If there is an antihypertensive which is not available, then we follow the same rules that we described for diabetes. Keep the class of drugs the same, but you can change one diuretic to another diuretic. If, however, no diuretic is available, then we have to change the class of drugs, give whatever is available, but intensify the frequency of monitoring. Another quiz question for us. Suppose we have 1 blood pressure apparatus and we have 100 patients, and we are worried that there may be COVID amongst some of these patients. asymptomatic COVID-19. How do we check blood pressure for everybody else? In a resource-limited society setting, how do we use the same BP apparatus, the same sphygmomanometer for everybody? Let's see if we can get best practices from across the world. Otherwise, we'll come back to this at the end. Now we have understood the principles of resource limited resource husbandry, and the same principles will apply to thyroid medication. Change the brand. If you're not getting 100 microgram, give 50 microgram. Take a weekly dose, and just follow the basic rules. So far, we have spoken of treatment, but then somebody will say, treatment is not possible without investigations. And that is true. Just like there is lack of availability, affordability, and accessibility to drugs, there is also lack of affordability and accessibility to investigations today. So what we have seen is that investigations are an add-on on history. Let me take 1 minute to reinforce this. And we see that we have senior professors from Myanmar with us. Greetings to all of you. The Myanmar professors and the Bangladesh professors have taught me a lot, and I'm grateful to these countries for having taught me a lot about practical endocrinology. So in medical college, first we take a history, then we do an examination. Only after that do we investigate and treat. So investigations are an add-on. They are an addition to history, not the other way around. So if you want to do glucose monitoring, and suppose you don't have glucose sticks, what do? Number one, fall back upon history. So let me share this tool with you, and the Public Health Foundation of India will be sharing these slides with you later on. So no need to take the details of how to get it. You will get this. We will request Public Health Foundation of India to download this questionnaire and give it also to all the participants.
Sure, sir.
This is a simple questionnaire which helps us screen and monitor for hypoglycemia. There are 12 questions in this. We will download and send you. These 12 questions can be used in history taking to ask our patients about symptoms suggestive of hypoglycemia. And if our patients get any or have any of these symptoms, then basically what we do, we just focus more upon the drugs that we are giving and try to reduce the dosage that we are giving. If actually we take a good history, our patient becomes happy. And I would like to thank Dr. Shrikala and Dr. Adele. Oh, Adele, your name is almost like mine. And Ayodele, this is my Yoruba name. Yoruba is a language in Nigeria. That is where I was born. So Ayodele means happiness comes home. Joy has come home. And actually, our patients are not happy today. But if we take a good history, we follow therapy by the ear, we can actually bring joy. And when we work together, Dr. Atieno Jalengo from Kenya has this to share. So thank you, Atieno. Ubuntu means I am because we are. So I am part of society. If I work along with everybody else in my society, and Atieno, just tell us the Swahili for this. How do we work together? How do we pull together to win? What's the Swahili for this? If we pull together, we will win. And if we explain this to our community that we are all in it together, we have to work together, they understand what we are doing. Atieno has another best practice to share with us. What she says is, in resource-limited settings, arrange the patients in groups and issue and train them. Yes, thank you, Atieno, for that. We can use peer educators or lay, L-A-Y, lay educators to help manage all the various challenges that we are facing today. Now, all this is not easy to do. It's quite tough. And this proverb from Mozambique reminds us that there are no shortcuts to the top of the palm tree. Now atala para topo de palmera. So if you want to reach Topo de Palmera, you have to go the long way. You have to climb with difficulty. So therefore, you have to take these questions. These are the questions found in the hypoglycemia questionnaire. You have to understand them yourself, and then you have to ask your patient. It may take some time extra, but it will reinforce therapy by the ear. It will reinforce a feeling of Ubuntu in the OPD, and it will create a sensation, a feeling of self-reliance, self-confidence, self-efficacy. Along with the history, we should use investigations. I do not say that investigations should not be done. But if we don't have sticks for glucose monitoring, we can always do urine sugar monitoring. And if investigations are not available at all, and your patient is asymptomatic, then do not change the lipid management, do not change the thyroid management, just continue the same. Tell your patient to depend upon himself or herself. So from Nepal we learn, if you depend only on others and you wait for somebody to bring a lipid profile to your home or to bring a TSH assay to your home, you are going to become sick. So you might as well continue whatever drugs you are taking. Of course, if the patient is symptomatic, you can always try to take a history and guess whether the patient has got, let's say, hyperthyroid or hypothyroid, and you can always clinically try to titrate the dose. For thyroid, the simplest way to titrate dose would be a resting pulse rate. Resting pulse rate means when the patient has woken up, the patient is still lying in bed, just check the pulse. Teach the patient how to check pulse. If that is not possible, you can check the pulse during the daytime also. The patient should just be relaxing. And from Dr. Simon Pierre from Rwanda, yeah. Dr. Simon, though people will disagree with you, Ubuntu means humanity towards others. This is a Rwandan word. It is also a word from South Africa, and from Zimbabwe, and from Zambia. And actually, the best part of Ubuntu is that it is a humanity word. So we, in India and in Myanmar, in India and Nepal, we use the word Sarvodaya. But all of us accept the philosophy of Ubuntu, which has actually originated from Africa. It is nice to have webinars like this because you make a lot of friends from across the world, and you also you are able to meet old friends, and you are able to make new friends also from across the world and learn a lot of things. So these are things that I learned 20 years ago when I was a student, 25 years ago, and then we forgot them, and now they are coming back to us when we are in lockdown. So in normal times, not resource challenged, in normal times, when will we check urine sugar? Preferentially as compared to blood glucose. Number one, in elderly patients, because we don't want to prick them too often. And our only aim is to reduce the osmotic symptoms. So we just check urine sugar to make sure that it remains trace or negative, so that patient doesn't have osmotic symptoms. Second is, if your patient is on SGLT2 inhibitors and you're not sure whether your patient is actually taking the SGLT2 inhibitor or not, then you check a urine sugar. If it is positive, it means your patient took the drug. If it is negative, or maybe 1+, it means probably your patient is not taking the medicine. Also, in situations where tight control is not required, for whatever reason, we are very lax in our control, then we can manage with urine sugar. And the fourth, why this has all come up, because of resource limited settings now that we are in. Many of our patients will say, they will phone from the village and they will say, I don't have glucose sticks, but my pharmacy still has urine sugar sticks. So what do I do with them? So what you do with them is, what you tell your patient is, in Swahili, again, thank you, Dr. Atieno, umoja. Umoja means togetherness. And Harambee means, so Dr. Atieno and our other friends from Kenya, everybody is so quiet today. From Kenya, from Rwanda, what does Harambee mean? So how do you use urine sugar? If you remember, so far we have talked about general things. Then we spent some time talking about intramuscular insulin. We then spoke of the hypoglycemia awareness questionnaire. Now for urine sugar, the correct way is to do a double void sample. What does double void mean? Suppose I want to check fasting sugar at around 8 AM. I will ask my patient to empty her bladder at 7:45. drink some water, remain fasting, and then at 8 o'clock or 8:15, I check. I ask her to void again to give me a urine sample, and I check the sugar there. This guarantees that the urine that we are taking from the bladder was formed at around the same time. If the patient empties her bladder after 12 hours, then that urine sugar is of no value because we don't know at what time that urine was formed in the past 12 hours. This is called double void. What does paired sampling mean? Paired sampling means you do a double void before breakfast and then you do a double void 2 hours after breakfast. And you find the difference between both. This is called paired sampling. It tells you whether the tablet or the insulin we were giving at breakfast time was adequate or not. And the same thing you can do at lunchtime or at dinner time as required. But urine sugar has its limitations. So do not rely upon this during pregnancy. Do not rely upon it in a patient with renal glycosuria. And do not use it to assess glycemic efficacy of SGLT2 inhibitors. We will use it only when we want to check adherence to SGLT2I. Also, if you want very tight control, like gestational diabetes or a patient who is in ICU, then urine sugar will not help. What we have spoken about so far, we have laws for this. So we call them the law of investigative parsimony and the law of therapeutic parsimony. Therapeutic parsimony means that you give minimum drugs required in minimum dosage, in minimum frequency of administration, as long as they are able to achieve good therapeutic outcomes. The law of therapeutic parsimony is important for all our countries, our resource-limited countries, but especially so today, because you know that our economies are also suffering. So how do we follow therapeutic parsimony? Tell your patient to focus more upon non-pharmacological therapy. This comes quite, not exactly free, but quite free. So ask your patient to focus more on diet, on exercise, find ways of taking healthy food, ask the patient to grow a kitchen garden, exercising at home, so that medication bill can go down. And this is me actually. So we were under lockdown. I couldn't go to the gym. So on the left side, you see I am holding what we call an Indian Bell Club. Indian Bell Club. The Hindi name for it is Mugdar. So this weighs around 14 kg and you pick it up and you rotate it and like you just go left, right, and you can do whatever you want with it. So I play with this. And when I get bored with the Mugdar, then I bring out my endocrinology textbooks. And I'm doing a crossover trial on myself to see whether Williams Endocrinology is better than Harrison's textbook of medicine in helping me lose my weight. So one week I use the endocrinology book, the other week I use my medicine book. When our lockdown finishes, I will get back to you with the results of my trial. Investigative parsimony also we have discussed. The minimum investigations that are needed should be done. Sometimes tests are not available, so we can always postpone them. And you don't have to do the full battery of tests like is written in maybe the American or the European guidelines. They are written for normal times, not for desperate times like this. So instead of doing all the functions for the kidney, for example, you might want to do only serum creatinine. Before ordering any test, see whether it will impact your patient's life or not. The results of this test, will they impact your treatment? Will they impact your patient's quality of life? If yes, go ahead and do the test. If no, take a break. We have talked of modifying treatment. We have talked of modifying investigations. We have also talked of doing non-pharmacological therapy in a more systematic manner. But all these things, finally, why are we doing them? We are doing them because we want to reach a particular goal. In diabetes, the goal is our glucose levels. So if you are in troubled times, if you are in tough times, you just change your goalpost, change the goal. So how do we do that in diabetes? We follow what we call the SURE model, SURE. And SURE, sure, is something very important, because just like Dr. Atieno tells us, the Harambee philosophy from Kenya, from Tanzania, from Uganda, Rwanda, this is a guiding principle of working together and pooling resources to help individuals and the community develop. So which means that, let us say there is one type 1 diabetes person who has got a stock of urine sugar strips. She can share with her friends. And that way the Harambee philosophy helps us to work together. Supposing somebody has got an extra insulin vial, she can give it to her friend. And of course, by next week, we will try to provide the insulin to both of them. So this SURE model is something that I would like to speak about. And I have learned this from many friends across Africa, from Dr. Hind Iraqi in Morocco. And she taught me some French, which Cedric from Benin Republic has also helped me in. And let me tell you the French, so that let's see if Dr. Andrew Loco from Nigeria can translate back into English. Our Andrew is a Anglophone, but currently posted in Francophone West Africa. So on a very secret top level mission. So Andrew, let's see if you have learned some French there. So what does this mean? Le rhythm de la vie. Le rhythm de la vie. If you want to achieve this, and we'll wait for Andrew to give the translation. And Dr. Sajad, I have your question. I'll come back to it. And Dr. Simon, thanks. I could make out you're from your Rwanda. You're from Rwanda. Rwanda is the cleanest country in the whole world. It is so clean, so clean. There is no dirt there at all. So when you want to achieve glycemic goals, you follow what you call the SURE model. SURE. These 4 domains, SURE, can be categorized into 2 action-oriented domains and 2 caution-oriented domains. Action-oriented means that if my patient has a severe hyperglycemia, I will be more aggressive. If my patient has an urgent need for glucose control, I will be more aggressive. The style of hyperglycemia, whether the patient has got predominant fasting hyperglycemia or postprandial hyperglycemia, this will help me decide the kind of treatment I want to give. But the more severe the disease, the more aggressive I will be. If my patient has got an urgent need for glucose control, suppose my patient has got pyelonephritis, medical treatment will not work without good glucose control. Suppose he has got cholecystitis, surgical treatment is not possible without good glucose control. Then I have to be more aggressive. U is also for utility. Is the glucose control going to help? Suppose the patient is 85 years old, has got carcinoma prostate, and has got metastasis in the liver. Then glucose control is not going to help much. So I should not be very aggressive. In such cases, the 2 caution-oriented domains remind me of what to do. So you see, we did S and we did U. Now let's do R. R is for risk of hypoglycemia. If we have a person at high risk of hyperglycemia, then we should go slow. Our glycemic goals should be more caution-oriented. What are the risk factors for hypoglycemia? 3 medical causes: renal impairment, kidney impairment, hepatic impairment, that is liver impairment, and the third is gastrointestinal impairment, which can be absorption disorder or motility disorder. Renal, hepatic, gastrointestinal, within gastrointestinal, motility or absorption disease. 3 endocrine causes which increase the risk of hypoglycemia. These will be hypopituitary, hypothyroid, and hypoadrenal. And 3 general causes which predispose to hypoglycemia: elderly age, erratic lifestyle, including erratic food habits and erratic exercise habits. And the third is alcohol. If somebody takes a lot of alcohol, the risk of hypoglycemia goes up. The last one in our SURE model, SURE, is E. E is expected adherence of the individual and the expectation of the individual. What does this mean? If your patient expects tight glucose control, let's go ahead and give it to him or her. If your patient doesn't want good glucose control, very tight good glucose control, do not force him or her to do it, especially not now during COVID times. Expected adherence means your patient said, doctor, I really want to control my glucose. I want to bring it down to 3 millimole or to 60 milligram %. But you know that this patient cannot come back to you. He lives in a town which is 4 hours away from you, and travel is banned in your country because of COVID-19. So you know he cannot come back. The telephone systems don't work properly. Internet is very weak, and he will not be able to contact you if he gets hypoglycemia. So then tell the patient to go slow and tell him, we are not sure about your adherence. Let's go slow. Once COVID resolves, we will become more aggressive. And this brings us to Dr. Sajjad Wazir's question. Dr. Sajjad, which country are you from? Can I know? Just curious. So what Dr. Wazir asks us is, you feel hungry in hyperglycemia and you feel hungry in hypoglycemia as well. That is true. How do we know without lab investigation? So that's how we take a history. If your patient has hyperglycemia throughout the day, that is hyperglycemia. If your patient has hypoglycemia at intermittent periods, especially at the same time every day, that is hypoglycemia. If your patient has associated neuroglycopenic symptoms, for example, irritation, dizziness, the Hindi word is ghabrahat, a feeling of uneasiness, headache, then the chances of hypoglycemia are more. If your patient has adrenergic symptoms and signs, for example, palpitations, fast heart rate, then the chances of hypoglycemia are more. If your patient has continuous weight gain while on insulin or while on any other glucose lowering drug, weight gain after treatment, then the chances of hypoglycemia are more. It means the patient has got hypo. Because of hypo, the patient is following defensive snacking. Because of defensive snacking, the calories are going up, calorie intake is going up, that is causing weight gain. If your patient is feeling hungry, but the patient has got weight loss, this is an osmotic symptom, and this is suggestive of hyperglycemia. So based upon the symptoms and the signs, we can differentiate between hypo and hyper. Dr. Andrew wants to know about the limitations of urine sugar. So Dr. Andrew, you are right. But like I said, our topic today is resource challenged, is resource husbandry in resource challenged times. So whatever resources we have at the primary care level, we should use them. Remember the limitations of urine sugar monitoring, not to be used in pregnancy, not to be used in people who want tight control. So let me repeat again the French, le rhythm de la vie. Le rhythm de la vie. What is the English for this? And Dr. Sajjad is from Afghanistan. Warm greetings, Kashar Varor. And Sajjad now will have to tell everybody else what Kashar Varor means. So why does diabetes occur in cirrhosis? We will discuss this later. Let's move on with our talk. So far we have talked about resource husbandry. We talked of investigative parsimony and therapeutic parsimony. We have talked about various options we can use to reduce the burden of investigation cost. We have talked of how to change our therapy if required. Now what we are doing is, we are saying based upon whatever investigations and whatever treatment you have available, also based upon the individual situation of the patient, SURE, you might want to change your goals as well. So we can change our goals. From Kenya, from Dr. Atieno's home, we have this proverb: a heavy burden does not kill on the day that it is carried. In French, l'un fardeau ne tue pas le jour où il est porté. I get stuck with this. This is too difficult French. It's easier in English. A heavy burden does not kill on the day that it is carried. So if you put a heavy burden upon your patient, too many investigations, too many drugs, too many do's and don'ts, that same day it may not kill your patient, but sooner or later it will trouble her. So why do we want to trouble a fellow human being? So with the philosophy of Ubuntu, with the philosophy of Harambee, let's work together. If we can do what we call informed decision making and shared decision making, then usually things are fine. We are able to achieve good control. Yes, Sajid, well done. Kashal Roar means small brother. Okay, so you can actually help your patient and your community achieve good health, even in such troubled times. When we are talking of parsimony and we are talking of the burden of drugs, we should be aware of the cost of therapy. This is not a time to talk about what drug to give and what not to give in diabetes. But in general, remember that metformin and sulfonylureas are the most economical drugs. And I know that all the professors gathered here, our professors from Myanmar, our professors from Nigeria, from Mali, all of them continue to use sulfonylureas. We call it safe and smart use of sulfonylureas. If you accompany sulfonylurea use with good glucose control, with the good monitoring, the monitoring can be based on history, on urine sugar, or on plasma glucose. Things are very safe. And even the Americans admit that when cost is an issue, after metformin, it is sulfonylurea that we should prefer, or otherwise thioglitazones, that is pioglitazone. Even with insulins, try to use whatever is available. Try to use whatever is economical. Ask your patient what he or she can take in the long run. People will tell you that the older insulins cause more hypoglycemia. That is true. Dr. Andrew, Dr. Atieno, Dr. Thantanai from Myanmar all will agree with me. But if we give the proper dose and we educate the patient properly, we tell the patient to take the insulin at the correct time, eat food at the correct time, and exercise at the correct time, then things are fine. It just boils down to therapy by the ear. If you give insulin alone, it will never work. If you give insulin along with therapy by the ear, it will always work. And we have to do this. We have to train our fellow colleagues. We have to train our paramedical staff because we are just not enough. There may be enough doctors in Germany and Australia, but certainly we don't have enough doctors in India or Bangladesh or Afghanistan or West or East Africa. So how do we do this? Use paramedical staff. Use, like Dr. Atieno said, use the other patients as groups. Use lay workers, peer educators and lay educators to help out. And also use technology. Go out through YouTube, through Zoom, through WhatsApp, through all these various technological platforms to help the community. I know that in Benin Republic, there is a society for fighting obesity and endocrine disease. And this society is doing a very good job of educating the Beninese population about how to reduce weight and how to improve their health. Dr. Hussaini Usman from Nigeria, this question: in most developing countries, strips are out of stock. I agree with you, doctor. I fully agree. You may ask how many times you may ask your patient to check his glucose level during this lockdown. So Hussaini, whatever is possible. Hussaini, which city are you from? I did my O-levels in Zaria. So, and I'm quite sure Hussaini is from near Zaria, if not from Zaria itself. So whatever is possible, Hussaini, if glucose sticks are available, let him check. To maximize the impact of glucose, let the patient check paired, like before breakfast and after breakfast, or before lunch and after dinner. If glucose sticks are not available, check urine sugar. If even urine sugar is not available, just take a history. Follow this hypoglycemia questionnaire. Take a detailed history of neuroglycopenic symptoms, when they are occurring, when they are not occurring. You should be able to get a good idea. And Hussaini is from Katsina, which is quite close to Zaria. Sannu Hussaini, and I wish you well. Dr. Sajad had this question on liver cirrhosis and diabetes. Let me take this before moving on. So, when you look at diabetes, what is the cause of diabetes? There are two main causes. Number one, insulin deficiency. Number two, insulin resistance. Where does insulin resistance occur? In three organs of the body. Number one, liver. Number two, skeletal muscle. And number three, adipose tissue. If we have receptor dysfunction at any of these organs, that will cause insulin resistance. So what happens in the liver is the hepatic receptors become resistant to insulin. They don't respond to insulin anymore. This happens in cirrhosis, and the process of hepatic gluconeogenesis, production of glucose from non-glucose substances like proteins and fats, this gets deregulated. So whether the patient needs it or not, at night when the person with cirrhosis is sleeping, it will keep on the liver will keep on producing glucose. This causes hyperglycemia. The glucose level in the blood goes up. The high glucose level in the blood begins to bathe, B-A-T-H-E. It begins to bathe all parts of the body, including the endothelium. So endothelial dysfunction starts. This high glucose also reaches the beta cell and makes the beta cell exhausted, become weak. So a vicious cycle starts. Vicious cycle in English, V-I-C-I-O-U-S. A vicious or a bad cycle starts, and from hyperglycemia, dysglycemia, the patient with liver cirrhosis moves into diabetes. So Kashyap, I hope I've been able to answer this. If not, just let me know, I will try again. And Dr. Jan Muhammad has a question. So let me take this also before moving up. Adab, Dr. Jan Muhammad. And to both, to all Hussaini and Dr. Jan and to Sajid, I did wish you Ramadan Kareem, but Ramadan Mubarak. Ramzan Mubarak is what we use in India. What are the effects of blood transfusion on serum glucose? So actually there are none, because the blood transfusion that we have, that is around 350 ml, it contains minimal amount of conservants of the various biochemical substances in it, and it will not impact serum glucose of the recipient at all. Actually, there is no reason to prevent a person with type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes from donating blood. There is no reason at all. The only thing is the guidelines are very old, and in earlier days, they used to give porcine or bovine insulin. At that time, there was a fear of prion-related diseases, PRION-related diseases. This was because of something called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease that they had seen in people who were getting growth hormone. So they were afraid that these kind of diseases, animal diseases, viral diseases transmitted through porcine or through bovine insulin might be transmitted through blood. So because of that, all patients who were on animal insulin were prevented from donating blood. They have not, the insulins have changed now. The insulins are very safe, but the guidelines have not changed. If you have somebody who is well-controlled diabetic, he or she can easily donate blood. Also, if there is anybody with diabetes, he or she can receive blood as long as the blood groups and all are same. Madam Thantanai Minglavar, and warm greetings, Madam. Madam has a question. Madam is my teacher. She has taught me a lot about Buddhism and about, she has taught me a lot about life. Madam's question is to reduce the timing of SMBG and to reduce the timing of injection. is basal insulin preferable to basal bolus or premixed? So ma'am, whatever regimen the patient was taking earlier, we should try to continue the same regimen. Of course, what you are saying is correct. If the patient is on basal insulin, then we require less SMBG. If the patient is on premixed insulin, we require slightly more. And if the patient is on basal bolus insulin, then we require maximum SMBG. In our setup, ma'am, what I have seen personally, I work in a semi-rural setup, and our patients, they don't like insulin, but still they don't mind taking it. They don't like SMBG at all. So what we have done is we follow this hypoglycemia awareness questionnaire. And Dr. Muhammad is with us from Karachi. So Dr. Jan Muhammad would be very happy to know that this hypoglycemia awareness questionnaire, HAQ, HAQ, this is actually an Urdu word. That is how we coined it. HAQ means, Jan, what does HAQ mean in English? And it is published in a very prestigious journal from Karachi, from the Journal of Pakistan Medical Association. And I would like to ask another question to Sajjad Wazir. So Sajjad, you answered Krusher-Vor correctly. What is Jan Aga? And the reason I ask is because Dr. Jan Muhammad's telephone name is coming as Jan Aga on my screen. So what does Jan Aga mean in Pashto? We'll continue with the cirrhosis discussion later. We'll just follow what ma'am is saying. So ma'am, we use premixed insulin most often in South Asia. One thing that we all have in common, all of us who are gathered here today, we all come from carbohydrate loving countries. All of us just love our carbohydrates. Whether it is ugali in Tanzania or in Kenya or Rwanda, whether it is rice in Myanmar or Pakistan or India and Nepal and Sri Lanka, whether it is the lovely dates that you get from Afghanistan, and whether it is the fufu and the yam that you get in Ghana and Benin Republic and Nigeria. So we love our carbohydrates, and with basal insulin alone, we usually cannot control our glucose. So we give premixed insulin twice a day. We start with lower doses. Ma'am, with all these patients, every time they come to the OPD or they phone us, we follow the HAQ questionnaire, HAQ, hypoglycemia awareness. A number will come in this questionnaire. Of course, even zero, even one number is too much. But if you have a sudden change in the number, then it means there is an issue. Then something is wrong. Dr. Nongko asked a question. I will get back to you, Daksa, with this. And Dr. Kachwano has a point. Let me take this from Uganda. CDC advises checkup every 4 hours during this pandemic. Yes. And prescribes 2 weeks medications to your patients with thorough explanation. Thanks, Dr. Alex. Yes. So basically, prescribe for as long as possible so that the patient doesn't have to come back. And do a checkup regularly, as frequently as possible. The most important point that you have said is with thorough explanation. So this is therapy by the ear. Speak to your patient. Tell your patient what you are doing and why you are doing. And just remind me, Alex, we will talk about this. Dr. Cedric, thank you very much. But Cedric, you have not translated into French yet. Therapy by the ear. Dr. Miki Mong, thank you. Madam, this friendliness and smiling we learn from Myanmar. Myanmar is the land of smiles. I will come back to this difficult question by Dr. Nongko. Patient has got type 1 diabetes, is taking Actrapid 20 units 3 times daily and Glargine 10 units at bedtime. Not well controlled. Can I change Actrapid to Mixtard? So, Dr. Ko, the answer is that it will not be a good idea. If your patient is not well controlled, do not reduce the number of injections. Actually, you increase the number of injections. In this patient, what I would suggest is we reduce the Actrapid slightly and increase the Glargine. So total patient is on 70 units. If you were to keep it 70 only and give maybe let us say 45 units or 40 units of Actrapid total and 30 units of Glargine at bedtime, the control will improve. If your patient is afraid, you can also give Glargine 2 times a day. So we can do 15 units of Actrapid 3 times a day, that is 45, and 15 units of Glargine 2 times a day, that is 30, total 75, you will find that the control will improve. Another thing we have to check in this patient is some occult infection. So the patient may be having a urinary tract infection or a genital tract infection, and we have to correct that infection. Only then the glucose will come down. Another thing to look for is the injection technique. So just make sure that your patient is taking the correct vial and syringe, or the correct cartridge and pen, and also that the technique is correct. Ask your patient to send you a selfie. What does selfie mean? Self-injection examination. Self-injection site examination. Like we teach everybody breast palpation to diagnose breast cancer quickly, we should be teaching everybody to examine their injection sites to look for lipohypertrophy. If the patient has got lipohypertrophy, then insulin will not act at that site. There will be less pain, patient will continue injecting there, but there will be a lot of variability and there will be less absorption of insulin. Let me move on, and we are still waiting for Afghanistan to tell us what Jan Aga. Oh yeah, I got it. Thanks, Jan Aga. So Jan Aga means elder brother. So that is what somebody calls Dr. Jan Muhammad with a lot of affection. So see, we are learning Urdu and we are learning Pashto and French and Portuguese. So it's so much fun. I also used one word from Myanmar, which is Minglabar, which is warm greetings. And Dr. Jan Aga, thank you. Okay, and we have this again difficult question now. This is from Dr. Elaine Mushkamba. Dr. Elaine, which country are you from? So what Elaine asks us is, in developing countries, there is this big challenge of administering insulin. Yes. For patients who don't even have regular meals, that is correct. How can we help them maintain their blood glucose in nearly constant range? Okay, so we have talked of this, but let me repeat again. You tell your patient that insulin is important, especially if it is a type 1 diabetes patient. But you tell your patient that there are other things also to treatment apart from insulin. Number 1, diet. Number 2, exercise. Number 3, stress management. All these 3 are important. We understand that diet is an issue. We also understand that the rest of the world says eat a lot of protein. But proteins are expensive in Asia as well as in Africa. The cheapest food in our countries is either rice or maize or wheat. And it is not only cheap, it is tasty also. Our palates, I grew up on yam and gari. So Hussaini will understand, and Dr. Andrew Loco will understand what I'm coming from. So that is what I grew up, and that is still my favorite food. My favorite food is actually yam and plantains. So we love eating these foods. They are cheaper also. If you tell somebody to eat only chicken or mutton, that becomes very expensive. So we tell the patient, whatever you get to eat, take it, but take it in moderation. Do not eat everything at the same time. Try to follow what we call a 3+3 meal pattern. 3+3 meal pattern means 3 big meals and 3 small meals. Also, exercise regularly. Try to keep yourself calm. And with this, the insulin resistance will come down and the insulin requirement will also come down. You tell your patient that we know that we need SMBG. Suppose we need SMBG 7 times a day. We can't do that. So we can do something like urine sugar sometimes, or we can just follow history. We have a lot of questions now coming in. So let me take this question and then move on. I will answer all the questions before we finish. So anonymous attendee is asking me, in using tele and video consultations, how does the patient pay for the services? Okay. So number 1, of course, you can always be free. You can do it free of cost. Number 2 is, in every country that we are working in, I think the world leader in this is Kenya. We have these mobile phones apps. So from your mobile, you can pay somebody else on his mobile. This is called Paytm in India. And from Kenya, can one of our friends tell us what is the name? Because I remember reading about this, that Kenya was the first country in the world to do this. How do you transfer money from one mobile phone to another mobile phone? What is the name of that app in Kenya? So you can start a WhatsApp business account. That is free of cost. In the WhatsApp business account, whenever somebody sends you a WhatsApp, immediately a message will go to him saying that these and these are my consulting hours for telemedicine. Please pay 400 shillings or pay 2000 naira or pay 20,000 chats. Chats is from Myanmar. And contact me between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. So when the patient pays the money to your account, you get to know that is there. And then 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. you can speak with him or her. They can send you scanned copies of their consultation pages, of their investigations. They can send you a picture of their diabetic foot, or maybe any other issue that they have, any skin infection. They can send you pictures on WhatsApp and you can treat accordingly. When we are on telemedicine, okay, thank you, Doreen. Thanks. That is M-Pesa or Airtel Money Transfer. These are the Kenyan names. And Dr. Elaine, thank you. So Elaine is from Rwanda. Elaine, do you have something like this? Airtel Money Transfer or M-Pesa in Rwanda? So when you're on WhatsApp, Dr. Alex is saying in Uganda, it's called mobile money. Thanks a lot. So I'm sure it must be there in Rwanda as well. So we'll move on with the rest of the questions. So basically on teleconsultation and on video consultation, oh, something happened to my slides. On video or teleconsultation, you might want to do it free of cost. You might want to do it on a paid basis. But remember that it is a stressful time for the patient as well. So remember to be soft with the patient. Understand their needs and limitations. We all know that we are passing under stressful situations. And sometimes we have people who come in with a lot of anxiety. They might be our fellow health professionals. They might be people in the police, the policy makers. I'm sure they are having sleepless nights now. And even people in the general public. So what we have to offer sometimes is psychological first aid. You remember we spoke about therapy by the ear. Let's look at another concept now of psychological first aid. The first word that you see is called Panchsheel. This comes from Indonesia. This means 5 principles. Panch means 5. So when you are meeting somebody who is under stress, that stress can be because of COVID. It can be because of diabetes also. And this question that was asked by, Dr. Aliyu Abu Bakar. And from the name, I know that again, Aliyu is from Nigeria. Ramadan Kareem Alim, Sanu, Aliyu. Sanu, and Aliyu is from someplace near Zaria, I am quite sure. So this is to answer your question in part, Aliyu. I'll come back to it later. If your patient comes in with a diagnosis of diabetes, suddenly, the first thing is to create a sense of safety. Tell him, don't worry, little brother. Don't worry, uncle. You are safe with me. I am here to take care of you. Then you create a sense of calm. Calm down, everything will be fine. Together, we will take care of your sugar. That is collective efficacy. Alone, we will strengthen you so much that you can take good care of your sugar. You will be able to take good care of your health. Create connections. Maybe alone, you cannot take care of your sugar. Maybe even together, you and I cannot take care of sugar. But this diabetes nurse is there. She will help you. Maybe I do not know Hausa language or I do not know Pashto, but let me connect you to this doctor. He will speak to you in Hausa, he will speak to you in Pashto, and he will help you. Maybe I do not know the diet that is followed in Mozambique or the diet that is followed in Cote d'Ivoire, but I will put you in touch with a dietitian who knows about Mozambique food, who knows about Cote d'Ivoire food. And finally, you create a sense of hope. Of course, we will win. We will come out of these tough times and we will win. So this is the psychological first aid. We will try to discuss this in a separate manner. A few minutes from now, we call it the water approach. But this question, which has been asked by many of you, how do we control diabetes, especially during resource challenge times, especially in countries where there is less money? If all our patients follow this simple ABCDE, certainly they will be able to manage diabetes. The first is accept modern therapy, accept the diagnosis, and please adhere to therapy that your doctor is suggesting. Second is behavior. Whatever behavior we have, we should respect the boundaries of moderation. So from Sri Lanka, from Myanmar, follow the middle path that Lord Buddha has advised. Number 3 is calmness and control over self. Again, learning from Lord Buddha, learning from the holy month of Ramadan. Ramadan is a month where you are expected to experience God, to pray to Allah, and to be calm and under control. It teaches you how to control yourself. And this actually works out. You can teach your patient. When you get angry, you get hormones which make you angry. These are adrenaline and noradrenaline. These angry hormones, they increase sugar and they resist or they cause insulin resistance. So they antagonize the effect of insulin. So if you become angry or anxious, you will need more insulin. If you remain relaxed, calm, happy, self-controlled, like from Myanmar, we have happy people. And in Mozambique, Hidayat is always smiling. And he smiled also. I saw him laughing when I was speaking in Portuguese. When you laugh, when you smile, when you are happy, then you get a hormone called dopamine. Dopamine brings down glucose levels. So this calmness and self-control helps reduce glucose. It helps reduce the requirement of glucose-lowering drugs. D is for dietary discipline. Whatever is available, take it regularly. Do not take all the food at one time. Try to follow a 3+3 meal pattern. Now, this is also easy to say, but suppose your patient is a farmer in Uganda, or he is a farmer in South Africa, and he says, you know, doctor, I go to my farm at 5 a.m. and then I come back at 7 p.m. What can I do? You just tell him, take some food along with you, and you will be taking some lunch with you. Don't eat all of it at the same time. You take some at 12 noon and you take some at 3 p.m. So what you explain to him is that if you eat all the food at one time, this is how the glucose level will go up, right on top, and your insulin, your body insulin will not be able to handle it. And then when the sugars come down, they will come down so fast, you will get hypo. So if you go slow, take little bit at the same time, you will not have any surges of glucose. You will not have any troughs of low glucose. The fifth point in ABCDE is, I forgot to write it actually, it is enjoyable exercise. I forgot to write the whole thing. So you have to enjoy your exercise and you have to have energetic physical activity, whatever is available. So once we accept the diagnosis, we adhere to our doctor's treatment. Once we behave in moderation, remain calm, follow dietary discipline, and we enjoy our exercise and practice energetic physical activity, we can actually bring down the financial burden of glucose control. So we've talked about a lot of things today. Our topic was resource husbandry. We've focused more upon diabetes and endocrinology. The reason is that I am an endocrinologist. Another reason is that it is diabetes actually which causes the maximum problems in today's times. For other diseases, there is not too much of a problem, the other chronic diseases. And the questions also that we have, these also tell us that even for those of us who are gathered, diabetes is a bigger issue. So let me take up all the questions. Are there any comments, any questions? The PHFI team, any questions or comments? How much time do I have?
Sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful talk. I just want to highlight, to summarize the things, what you have highlighted. The first statement was that COVID is a great leveler across the globe. That is the first statement of your talk, which you have, and the talks have initiated after this. I think desperate times breed desperate measures, as explained by Shakespeare's G. So this is the real time when everybody is facing a lot of issues, and I think it's a blessings in disguise. We should learn what best out of these we can create some innovations also. You have talked about the law of therapeutic parsimony. That is, it is very important that in today's scenario, whatever resources are there, and if we have a limited number of resources, what best we can do. That is where all of us in the resource limited countries, as well as resource limited condition, we should provide our best to our patients also. Then you talked about, sir, law of investigative parsimony. That is a minimum test, whatever is needed, and whatever you have learned around 25 years back into your medical college time. You have tried to highlight those investigative parsimony for various investigations also. Then you talked about the SURE model and modification of the glycemic goals. I think there are a lot of countries where we have low doctor-patient ratio is there. So there we have to leverage our paramedics to support and to increase the doctor's capacity. We have supplementary support we need in a form of technology. And you have highlighted very clearly like these type of technology platforms, YouTubes, WhatsApps, webinars. They are playing a great role. So we have two sources made of, one is teleconsultation and video consultation. And the last, you have finished your talk by saying that the mantra of Panchsheel. The Panchsheel mantra, the concept of this that creates is so safety, space for safety, create a space for calmness, and we should have self-efficacy and collective efficacy also. Create connections, create a sense of hope. And at last, you said that you have finished your talk by appraising all of us and guiding all of us that this is the time where we need the innovative approaches, and that is the need of a time. I think we have learned a lot from your wonderful talk. I think maybe our colleagues from the different parts of the globe, those who have joined together to hear about your talk, I think they may be having some more questions. On behalf of PHFI, sir, we are really thankful to you to enlighten us also during this resource limited situations also. What PHFI also can do, we have also learned from you on this talk also. So thank you for giving us education on this.
Thank you. Let me take over, let me handle the other questions that we have left. From Dr. Simon Pierre in Rwanda, he also mentions that we have mobile money or Airtel money. And to Dr. Elaine and to Dr. Simon, in India now, there is a lot of discussion on telemedicine. And we find many third-party companies which have come up offering platforms for doing telemedicine. Many of these platforms are not safe in the sense that the patient data may not be safe. It may be sold to other parties. So if you don't have a very busy practice, try to manage on your own on WhatsApp plus Airtel money or mobile money or M-Pesa. That would be friendly advice to all of you. Adele and Shrikala answered my question about my name. Thank you. Adele, I was born in Ibadan. And let me move on to the questions in the question and answer. The other ones, first they were coming from the chat box. Dr. Thantanaya says that we have Viber. Yes, in Myanmar. Yes, ma'am. Oh, Madam is sharing best practice for us. So, Madam is senior professor from Yangon city in Myanmar. She is known not only in Myanmar, but across Southeast Asia. So, this is her advice for telecommunication, for telemedicine. Madam is telling us, Dr. Thantanaya is telling us, for consultation, we use telecom through Viber video. In Viber video, we can see face-to-face and communicate. We can give instructions properly. For insulin therapy, I connect them to my junior doctors. Viber is very effective because the patient sends their SMBG results, and then the MO, the doctor, changes the dose of insulin. If necessary, the doctor asks for my opinion, and the patient and the doctor both feel confident. Thank you. Le Rhythm de la Vie. This I learned from Morocco, from Dr. Hind Iraqi, and this means the rhythm of life. So the basic thing is that diabetes is part of life. when we are managing diabetes or hypertension or rheumatoid arthritis, any other chronic disease, we should not disturb the rhythm of life. The rhythm of life should continue. We should minimize our intrusion into the patient's life. This is called index of intrusion. I hope that our Portuguese and Spanish and French speakers understand this. The index of intrusion. If you intrude too much into the patient's life, let us say I tell the patient that you have to eat only 4 times a day, you have to eat only food which is imported from China, and you have to take insulin 12 times a day. But your HbA1c will be perfect. You will never have any complication. My patient will say, doctor, thank you. I am happy without your medication. I do not want to eat Chinese food. I do not want to take insulin 12 times a day. I will live life with my diabetes. I will enjoy my rhythm of life, whatever God has given me. So we should not interfere too much with the patient's life when we choose a therapy. Dr. Abu Bakr asked, what advice should we give to the client when his first test on glucose testing shows that he is diabetic? At this time, Dr. Abu Bakr, look at the emotions of your patient. Now, there are 4 main emotions that the patient can come with. 1, denial. Number 2, anger. Number 3, anxiety. And number 4, depression. Let us do them all over again. D, A, D. 2 D's and 2 A's. Let's do them one by one. D for denial means that the patient says, Dr. Aliu, you are telling me a lie. Your machine is spoiled. Your machine is made in China. It is giving me the wrong result. So you are telling me a lie. You want to make me a diabetic just so that you can get one more patient. In such a case, don't get angry at him. Just tell him to relax. Tell him that we can repeat your sugar again after 2 or 3 days. Or tell him, we have done a blood glucose. Let us do a urine sugar also. Number 2 emotion that you might face is anger. So anger will come as, doctor, it's all your fault. You have caused sugar. I came to you 3.5 years ago. If you had done my sugar that time I came to you for fever. That time you didn't check my sugar. So it's all your fault that I've become diabetic. Again, don't get angry at him again. Tell him to calm down and tell him not to get angry. Tell him that we will work together to control his glucose. The third is A for anxiety. So patient says, doctor, I agree with you. I have sugar, but now I am worried. I think I will not be able to handle myself. I will not be able to handle all the things a diabetic has to do. This is called diabetes distress. Diabetes distress. So here we cheer up the patient. Don't worry, I am with you. I will give you connections. I will help you control diabetes. Together we will be effective. And the fourth, if you remember, D was depression. This means that the patient just goes into depression and just sits down and says, now life has come to an end. Now I am going to die. I will never become well again. Then we tell him that diabetes does not have any complications. It is uncontrolled diabetes which has complications. So we will never let you be uncontrolled. So don't worry at all, right? So that will help us. Cheer up the patient and make friends with him. We have other questions also. Dr. Aliu is also from Katsina, which is the north of Nigeria, that is quite near the Sahara Desert. And so now we have people from all over the world actually who have joined in. I wanted to continue the discussion that Dr. Sajjad Wazir started from Kabul. He was talking about liver cirrhosis. So yes, now in liver cirrhosis, normally the patient has hypoglycemia, hypoglycemia. But when in some cases, in some patients, the patient will have hyperglycemia. The trick here is that you have to give small, frequent doses of insulin. If we give small, frequent doses of insulin, the chances of hypoglycemia go down. Dr. Jan Mohammad's question from Karachi we had taken. Madam's comment also, Dr. Thantanai's comment we had mentioned. And also we said that basal insulin is preferred, but in most parts of Africa and Asia, we will need premixed insulin. Ma'am, if we follow the Haq questionnaire, and Dr. Jan Mohabbat didn't tell us the meaning of Haq in Urdu. Jan aga reh gaya abhi, you have to answer. So if we take a good history regularly, then we don't need too much of SMBG. To Dr. Nonko, we had answered that if glucose is not well controlled, try to increase the basal dose, reduce the prandial dose. Also ensure that insulin technique is good. Ensure that there is no mismatch between the insulin and the insulin delivery device. And look for other things also, like infection, inflammation, irritability. Irritability means psychiatric. So things to remember are, if you have a person with poor control, try to rule out I for infection, I for inflammation. For example, frozen shoulder. For example, rheumatoid arthritis. I for irritability. For example, psychological distress. I for iatrogenic. Maybe the patient is taking some alternative medication, some traditional herbs, some drug given by a faith healer, some Chinese medicine, which might be causing hyperglycemia because it contains corticosteroids. I is for invasive. Maybe the patient has got some kind of a tumor, some kind of a stone which requires removal. And to PHFI, based upon the questions that we see, I think we should have a webinar on difficult diabetes, how to handle difficult diabetes. Yeah.
Okay.
We have another question on SGLT2 inhibitors. Yes, sorry, I cannot recognize the name or the country, but if your patient is well, we can happily start SGLT2 inhibitors. During Ramadan, be careful. If the patient is already on SGLT2 inhibitor, tell the patient to take it after iftar, that is the evening meal, the breaking of the fast in the night. After the iftar meal, patient can take SGLT2 inhibitor. But if the patient has not been on SGLT2 inhibitor earlier, and now the patient is fasting during summer months, do not start right now. Otherwise, we can continue. Dr. Alex had already given us a point, and what Dr. Alex told us is that as part of pragmatic treatment during COVID times, prescribe medication for a long time. And we thank you for all the comments that are coming. And okay, so Abu Bakr had an issue with his network, but we will send all the slides to you, Aliyu. And please try to translate the hypoglycemia awareness questionnaire into Hausa. You will really enjoy translating it. And when you have an all Nigeria meeting, you will really enjoy discussing with your friends from across the country how the definition of hypoglycemic symptoms changes in Yoruba and Igbo and Hausa. I have a question from Dr. Abdul. How can we diagnose for UTI? Okay, so number one, you can look for symptoms, that is burning micturition, burning while passing urine, or pain while passing urine. Some people may also complain of bleeding. You can look for the signs, which will be, so the symptoms will also include fevers with chills. The signs will be high temperature with rigors, and the patient may have evidence of genital infection. So in the women, pruritus vulvae, in the men, melanoposthitis. And also in the suprapubic area, you might find tenderness. Some people with diabetes will also have asymptomatic UTI. These can be diagnosed only by a urine routine. You have to look for pus cells. Okay, another difficult question. This is from Dr. Fauziat Vadamosi. So Fauziat, which country are you from? Now, nutrition is very important for diabetes management. What is the definition of diabetes? Diabetes is a state of carbohydrate intolerance. If we give too much of carbohydrate, the body cannot handle it. The insulin that is produced by the body is not enough, or it is not strong enough. It is not effective enough to manage metabolism. So people get high glucose levels. And once this high glucose levels things start, then that vicious cycle, like we talked about, the bad cycle begins. So if we follow good nutrition, we can actually prevent carbohydrate intolerance and we can improve health. What are the basic principles for nutritional management? This is true for all over the world, whether it is America or Europe or Africa or Asia or Australia. Number one, eat in moderation. Number two, eat small frequent meals. Number three, reduce the carbohydrate, but increase the protein. Number four, within the carbohydrate, reduce the simple carbohydrates, but do not reduce the complex carbohydrates. In Africa, we follow a term called CMT. This is the same in French and in English, but from my Mozambican amigos and colegas, can you please tell me whether it will be the same in Portuguese or not? C is for cereal, C-E-R-E-A-L. M is for millet. In French, it is mil, M-I-L-L-E-T. And T is for tuber, T-U-B-E-R. Tuber will include potato, sweet potato, yam, cocoyam. CMT together should be less than 50% of the total plate. If we reduce CMT, automatically the naturally colored foods will increase. What are the naturally colored foods? Three of them: salad, vegetable, and fruit. So increase the number of salad, vegetable, and fruit. Reduce the number of reduce the percentage of CMT, cereal, millet, tuber, and try to take as much protein as possible. Protein will come from three sources. One, milk and milk products. Number two, pulses in South Asia, that is in Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and in India. Most of our protein comes from pulses. And third is non-vegetarian food, which might be egg, or it might be mutton, or it might be chicken. So as much as possible, the patient should take high protein. As much as possible, the patient should take more of salad, fruit, and vegetable. And CMT, cereals, should go down. If we can follow this advice, carbohydrate intolerance will be minimized. Another question I have is, okay, though your name that is coming is anonymous attendee. So how many COVID-19 cases with diabetes? Many, Dr. Saab, so many. Is it a big issue? Yes. Now the prevalence, people with diabetes are not predisposed to COVID. However, people with uncontrolled diabetes are predisposed to COVID because they have impaired cell-mediated immunity and they have impaired humoral immunity. Once people with diabetes develop COVID, then the risk of death is more. The risk of getting admitted in ICU is high. The risk of death is high. So that is the biggest problem. Another issue is that some of the drugs that we use in COVID-19, like corticosteroids, they can cause hyperglycemia. Some other drugs like chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine, they can cause hypoglycemia. Okay, and another question, this is tough, and actually talking about food makes me so hungry, and all this time all the pictures of plantains and yams was going on in my mind. You talked about taking little food at a time to avoid glucose surge. What if the patient is hungry and still wants to eat more? Okay, so the patient can eat more. What we tell the patient is, why don't you eat some salad first, or some complex carbohydrates like so I need help from everybody across the world. What are the examples of complex carbohydrates that we will ask our patient to eat if he or she is hungry? In India, for example, we will ask them to eat salad, or we will ask them to eat roasted nuts. So when they eat roasted nuts and they eat it slowly, and we have roasted pulses also. they fill the stomach. From Myanmar, I know that there are so many types of rice, and each rice has a different glycemic index. So, would anybody want to tell us what rice has lesser glycemic index so that we can give that? And in general, if you take high protein diet in general, that will increase satiety. There is something called protein satiety hypothesis. What this means is that you will continue to feel hungry until you eat the required amount of protein. So if I just keep on eating rice and yam, I will still remain hungry until I eat the chicken or the egg or the pulses. Okay, so Dr. Peter had an issue with the network. Peter, okay, Babangida Peter. Okay, so I know where you are from as well, and we will send you the presentation. Don't worry. Haq from Dr. Jan Muhammad means reality, or Haq means it also means my right. So as a patient, I have a right to good glucose control. I have a right to euglycemia. That is my haq. As a doctor, I have a need and a right to know my patient's history. Otherwise, I cannot help the patient. So in the haq questionnaire, the patient's rights are taken care of and the doctor's rights are also taken care of. Dr. Hussaini Usman mentions that we need food exchange list. And if we have food exchange list, actually, it will help us make the right food choices. Nigeria is still lucky that we have Diabetes Association of Nigeria, which has done a very good job of making guidelines. There is an American food exchange list which contains many foods from Africa and Asia. So you can always access that. But then this is other work for PHFI that we should get together to create a national food exchange list. Hussaini, if you allow, I will take your email from Public Health Foundation of India and I will put you in touch with the leaders from Nigeria. Dr. Andrew Uloko is also here with us. I will ask PHFI to put you in touch with Dr. Uloko. And you are from the same area of the country also. Andrew is from Kano. Okay, Dr. Sandeep Balla wants to answer a question. Go ahead.
So we will send the respective presentations. The colleagues, those who have faced any difficulties in because of the connectivity issues, or somebody if they have joined late. So presentations are going to be there with all the colleagues, those who have joined or those who have even not joined, but they have registered with us in this network also. So purpose is to disseminate the things as much as we can. So
thanks. And Fauziat is also from my country, from Nigeria. And okay, so we have hypoglycemia translation coming in Hausa. Hypoglycemia awareness question. Okay, Karanchin sugar, Achikin Jini. Thanks, Abu Bakr, for that. I will request PHFI to make a group of all the Nigerian and all the Myanmar and all the other big countries that we have. All the colleagues will learn from each other. And that is a nice way of actually, putting Ubuntu into practice, that we are for each other. And then the Rwanda and the Kenya and the Uganda people, they can also learn a lot from each other. Because I myself am learning so much. I have a feeling that I have answered all the questions. If I missed anything, please let me know, friends.
No, sir. All the good. You're done with the Q&A. Thank you.
All are done. So then allow me to once again thank everybody. I would like to thank everybody who has joined in, everybody who has taught me so much language, right from Simon, who taught me Kinyarwanda, to Cedric, who has been very patient with me with my French, and Hidayat, who seems to have, Hidayat has got this, I don't know where he gets these patience skills from. He is so patient with me. He has been trying to teach me Portuguese for the past 2 years. I would also like to thank my teachers, Dr. Thantanaya especially. Madam is senior most professor with us. My friends like Dr. Andrew Loco, Atieno, Giliano, all of you have spared time. And once again to everybody, wishing you a very blessed and very fulfilling Ramadan. And we pray for world peace and world health. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving your wonderful talk. And thank you on behalf of PHFI, GDC and RIS. for joining this initiative and helping us in the second series also. And we are expecting that multiple series are in the plan in future also, and we need your kind guidance and help in future also. Thanks to all the colleagues, those who have joined from the different parts of the globe. Hope these type of webinars which we are organizing may add a great value to all of you in day-to-day management. But still, if you have any feedbacks, critical feedbacks to us, please share with us. It will help us to modify, it will help us to strengthen ourselves, and it will enlighten us how we can make our series much more appropriate and much more outcome oriented. With these words, on behalf of PHFI, thank you, Jai Hind, to all of you.